guys, so in this video I just wanted to explain about the difficulty level of Chinese and briefly talk about my experience studying Chinese. So I studied Chinese in high school for a few years, and I always got asked about Chinese, the difficulty, like how could I study a language so difficult? And I was studying 2 foreign languages in high school, so I was asked a lot about that in general and just sort of comparing the two more or less. But granted, Chinese is a difficult language and it's a lot different than Spanish, the other language I was studying in high school. I don't think it's as difficult as people think before having studied it, but this is just my opinion. This video will be talking about what I think about it and so on. So when I was starting my junior year of high school, 11th grade, that's when I started taking Chinese. I signed up for it my sophomore year. I was originally gonna start taking French because I wanted to start learning another foreign language. I thought it'd be more useful. I wanted to be an archaeologist. I was really interested in South America when I started taking Spanish in 8th grade, and so that kind of like fueled it why I wanted to learn Spanish. And then as I got older, more things contributed to it. But anyways, I was going to take French because my school only offered Spanish and French at the time, and then that's when they added Chinese. So I was like, oh, I love Chinese food, why wouldn't I want to take Chinese? So I was kind of like excited about it, I suppose, before junior year started. And then probably about a week or two before junior year started, I started getting a little nervous. I was, rather concerned, I guess, about my GPA, having to apply to colleges soon and whatnot. And I started to think, was it really a good idea signing up for Chinese class? I didn't know a single word in Chinese, didn't know what the class would be like. I thought it was kind of odd that my school offered it in general because they don't really focus on the language department. A lot of their money went to sports and those kind of departments just because that's where all their donors came from. So for them it made sense to donate money toward that rather than the language department and other departments of the school. So I didn't really know what it would be like, and I started Chinese class, and the really cool thing about it was that my teacher was part of a teacher exchange program. So she was teaching English at a school in China, and she decided to come over here and teach Chinese. So her contract was originally for 2 years, but after about a year she had to go back because her school wanted her back, and also she had been away from her family for a whole entire year. So I can imagine 1 year abroad teaching and being away from your friends and family is probably long enough. So as I probably imagined, Chinese class didn't have a ton of students. The teacher went back and forth from the middle school to the high school because middle school, you can start taking foreign languages if you want. Taking a foreign language at my school is not required. Some colleges, I think there's only one in my state that actually require 2 or 3 years of a foreign language in high school. But other than that, you really don't have to take a foreign language. So I started Chinese, and I was a little confused at first as to why I was doing better than I thought, because it wasn't like, other languages I speak, but I think what contributed to having good grades in class had a lot to do with the teacher. She was really focused on her students and not just the lesson plan, sticking to, what she had to teach. She went out of her way to make sure the students were understanding it and that what we were learning related to our everyday lives. And she made sure to get to know the students on like a personal level. Like, she was an amazing teacher. And so we started learning the writing system, but also the speaking, like pronunciation at the same time, which apparently is not what most schools do. So I've heard, she talked about how there were schools, like she was talking to teachers who had been teaching Chinese, like second and third year students. They could not speak the language, they could only write it. And for her, she's like, I don't really see the point in that. You should learn it together if you want to use the language and improve in it. So she taught us speaking and writing and really everything about the language. So we started with characters, and apparently with characters there's radicals. She taught us a lot about radicals, where my second year in Chinese teacher, we didn't do anything with radicals. She said radicals would help us remember the characters for certain words, because each radical has like a name. There's like white spoon is one of them. Long knife, short knife. I don't really know. But we kind of thought this was a little funny because a lot of the characters and words we were learning actually had nothing to do with the names of the radicals. For example, in the character green, you have, what is it, the radical, or in the character blue, you have the radical grass. Isn't grass green though? So this was always kind of funny and what we joked about. But anyways, it really helped improve like how you write the characters. So I didn't realize that with, you know, speaking Chinese, I didn't really know like how that would go about since it's a character system, but they have the pinyin system, which tells you how to pronounce the word. Also, when you type on a keyboard Chinese, you can type in the pinyin and the characters will come up and they have like all the suggested ones because the pronunciation has a tone system. So when I try to explain this to people who don't speak Chinese, I kind of say it's like accents in a different language, but you have 4 of them, so that's how you should raise or lower your voice, kind of, if that makes sense. And that part was probably the trickiest for me, was the pronunciation. It still is. My pronunciation is still super bad. But yes, so you have a tone system, so you can have a word that looks, the writing is the same in pinyin, right? But with each pronunciation of the tone, if you have first tone, second tone, third tone, fourth tone, the word means something different in every tone. So if you mispronounce something, your sentence could be totally different. So that's the really tricky part in Chinese, at least for me. That was super, super hard. Still is super hard to get used to. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing, but when you're in a class situation, when you're working with a tutor, like, it doesn't really matter if you mess up, and like messing up only helps you improve. So make as many mistakes as you possibly can, because that's going to help you work toward a fluency. So we learned a lot about culture, which I like, because like in my Spanish class, after about the first year, you don't learn too much about culture at all, which for me was kind of disappointing, because when I chose to learn Spanish, it was a lot based on the culture. So I really liked how we learned a lot about Chinese culture, because I didn't know too much about it before. And we learned about all the holidays. Every Friday was Culture Friday. And the grading system was a little different, and we had a lot more assignments. But our teacher, like, if you did bad on one assignment, you could redo it, like with quizzes and tests. That was always the thing. You can always redo it. And so that was super nice. Like, just, it was an intensive class, but because we had such an amazing teacher, I think that's probably why I did better than I expected. Also, I'm dyslexic, so I think having a language that apparently, according to another student in my class, like, it deals with a different side of the brain, and so that's why, I guess, in his case, he was also dyslexic, he said, like, you do better with the language, so that was a surprise to me. So second year Chinese in high school, my senior year, was a bit different. Not that it was bad different. I had a different teacher. She had graduated from a school in Wisconsin, the state I live in. She had taught all different students, like grade levels in Chinese. We didn't have Culture Fridays anymore, so that was a little bit of a bummer, but I think Culture Fridays for everyone was just another thing we liked, was getting out of classwork. But we still learned about the holidays, like Chinese New Year was something we always did. We cooked Chinese food. That was pretty awesome. And we learned a lot of vocab. It was all pretty much vocab, because grammar in Chinese is can be pretty, I would say, simple maybe, just because you don't have to like when you're looking at the Romance languages, you have to conjugate it for every subject, like a verb. So if you're talking about I, you're gonna have a different conjugation than what if you're talking about a different person, as in you, with the verb. As in Chinese, you just have the subject pronoun, then you have the verb. The verb does not change at all for people. And then with like the tenses, like I think we only learned like 3 grammar tenses by the time I finished my second year, because like just the vocab was the thing that was more difficult to learn than the grammar. And for me, I always hated grammar when it came to learning a language. Now I've gotten a little more I accepted it like better. I've improved, I guess, tolerated it more, I would say. But I like vocab. I like to study a bit more, because I feel like, I think every part of a language is useful, but vocab is just something I always enjoyed more. So it was a little bit of a more enjoyable experience for me overall with Chinese. By the end of my second year of Chinese, I would say that my level was probably the same as my level at the end of my second year of Spanish with school. And that's because I had some really good teachers. You know, I've only had experience with taking Chinese in school and studying it independently. So I'm not sure, there's not a universal system when it comes to learning a language in school. You always, like, each teacher teaches differently for the most part. Yes, they have a lesson plan, but still they incorporate different methods. And I've had the opportunity to observe that in 4 different languages, and it's really been something interesting. And so I think since my teachers had such a good way of going about it, it seemed a little less, you know, difficult than I imagined. But I think in general, like Chinese, people think it's so difficult, and they don't, maybe that's like a reason why they stray away from learning it, why they don't want to learn it. It's not as treacherous as you think. It's really something useful to learn. It's something that's enjoyable if you like languages. You can learn a lot from a language, and it serves more than just being able to speak it. You'll have a lot of opportunities you wouldn't have had before when it comes to speaking another language. So I think Chinese may be one of those languages you should reconsider. Of course, if you have any questions for me about Chinese, like studying methods or just advice, feel free to ask me. If you're into languages, traveling, au pair things, be sure to check out my channel, subscribe if you want, and I will catch you all on the flip side.